We will begin with an overview, followed by a discussion of pack control, trim air, zone temperature control, and lower lobe cargo conditioned airflow rate. The airplane is divided into 7 temperature zones. They are referred to as flight deck, upper deck, crew rest, forward main deck cargo, aft main deck cargo, forward lower lobe cargo, and aft lower lobe cargo. The bleed air system supplies bleed air to 3 air conditioning packs. Conditioned air from the packs is supplied to a conditioned air manifold and distributed to the upper deck and main deck cargo zones. The forward lower lobe cargo compartment is supplied with conditioned air directly from Pack 3. The aft lower lobe cargo compartment is supplied with conditioned air directly from Pack 2. Zone temperature control is maintained throughout the airplane by adding warm trim air to the conditioned air. Controls for the air conditioning system are located on the overhead panel. The lower lobe cargo conditioned airflow rate selector is located on the overhead maintenance panel. Two pack controllers, A and B, provide air conditioning pack control. Each of the 3 air conditioning packs has its own control selector. With the pack control selector in the normal position, the system automatically selects controller A or B on an alternating flight basis. With the pack control selector in the A or B position, the respective pack controller is selected. If the selected pack controller fails, the system will automatically switch to the other controller, regardless of the pack control selector position. The 747-400 air conditioning system is similar to those in other Boeing airplanes. The system provides conditioned air at controlled temperatures. The system includes 3 packs and the trim air system. The air conditioning packs receive hot bleed air from the engines, from the APU, or from ground air sources. The packs cool the bleed air before passing it to the conditioned air manifold. Conditioned air can also be added to the conditioned air manifold by ground air sources. Conditioned air is then distributed to the upper deck and the main deck cargo zones. Pack 2 supplies the aft cargo compartment with conditioned air. Pack 3 supplies the forward lower lobe cargo compartment with conditioned air. Hot trim air from the bleed air system is mixed with conditioned air from the manifold. This controls the temperature in each zone. Controls for the air conditioning system are located on the overhead panel. The ECS synoptic shows various air conditioning system operations. Select the ECS synoptic. These switches control operation of the packs. Notice the ICAS memo message, "Packs Off," is displayed. This indicates that the pack valves are closed. The packs are normally switched off as part of the secure procedure. They should be turned on again during pre-flight. Turn on the packs. The ICAS message "Packs Off" is no longer displayed. With normal selected, a flow control valve opens. This allows bleed air to enter the pack. Airflow to the packs is shown on the synoptic by green flow lines. Hot bleed air entering the pack is cooled by heat exchangers. Next, the air enters an air cycle machine where the air is cooled to the temperature of the zone requesting the coolest air. The cooled air is then supplied to the conditioned air manifold and distributed to zones in the airplane. The trim air switch is an alternate action switch located on the overhead panel. Trim air is hot air directly from the bleed air supply. With the trim air switch on, trim air can supplement conditioned air to satisfy the temperature requirements of each individual zone. Trim air for the forward and aft lower lobe cargo zones is supplied directly from the bleed air duct and is not controlled by the master trim air valve. With the trim air switch off, bleed air is not available for upper deck, crew rest, or main deck zone temperature adjustments. The ICAS advisory message, "Trim Air Off," is displayed. With the trim air switch off, pack output temperature is circulated to provide an average flight deck temperature of 24 degrees Celsius. Trim air for the aft lower lobe cargo compartment is shut off automatically when the lower lobe cargo conditioned airflow rate selector is off. Pack 2 is shut down, or the aft lower lobe cargo air conditioning supply duct has overheated. Trim air for the forward lower lobe cargo compartment is shut off automatically when the lower lobe cargo conditioned airflow rate selector is off. Pack 3 is shut down, or the forward lower lobe cargo air conditioning supply duct has overheated. This switch controls trim air. Push the trim air switch to on. When the trim air switch is on, the ICAS message disappears. The trim valves open. This allows hot trim air to mix with cool conditioned air to modify temperatures in all zones except in the zone that requires the coolest air. The temperature selectors for the flight deck, main deck, and lower lobe cargo zones are located on the overhead panel. With the zone temperature selector in the auto range, the selected zone temperature is maintained automatically. This selector controls the flight deck temperature. It is normally left in the auto range. The target temperature for the flight deck is shown on the synoptic. The actual flight deck temperature is also shown. In the auto range, you can adjust the flight deck temperature from 18 to 29 degrees Celsius. Increase the temperature to 27 degrees. Notice that the target temperature increased to 27 degrees. After a short period of time, the actual flight deck temperature also reaches 27 degrees. Now decrease the flight deck temperature to 18 degrees. Notice that the target temperature decreased to 18 degrees and the actual flight deck temperature decreased to 18 degrees. Now rotate the flight deck temperature selector to man or manual position. With the selector in manual, you control the trim air valve. The manual position is used when automatic temperature control is not available. Notice the target temperature is blanked. In the auto range, the main deck and lower lobe cargo zone temperatures can be adjusted between 4 and 29 degrees Celsius. Controls for setting the upper deck and crew rest temperatures are located on the Cabin Services module. The cabin temperature panel automatically sets the upper deck and crew rest target zone temperature to 24 degrees Celsius. Automatic comfort corrections and cabin temperature panel inputs set the upper deck and crew rest zone target temperatures. Automatic comfort correction compensates for changes in humidity and supernumerary activity in the upper deck and crew rest zones. The target temperature may be adjusted plus or minus 6 degrees from the temperature set by the flight deck temperature selector, within the range of 18 to 29 degrees Celsius. Each push changes the target temperature by 1 degree Celsius. Pushing and holding the reset switch cancels all upper deck and crew rest zone temperature adjustments and returns the target temperature to 24 degrees Celsius. Pushing the Zone Select switch alternates between the upper deck and crew rest compartments. This permits setting the target temperature for each compartment. The ECS Synoptic displays actual zone temperatures on the right in white and target zone temperatures on the left in magenta. The lower lobe cargo conditioned airflow rate selector is located on the overhead maintenance panel. Pack 1 supplies conditioned air to the conditioned air manifold, which supplies conditioned air to the main deck and upper deck. The lower lobe cargo conditioned airflow rate, or LLCC-AFR, selector controls conditioned airflow to the lower lobe cargo compartments. With both low selected, Pack 2 and Pack 3 both air-condition their lower lobe cargo compartments and supply air to the conditioned air manifold. With aft low selected, Pack 2 air conditions the aft lower lobe cargo compartment and supplies air to the conditioned air manifold. With forward low selected, Pack 3 air conditions the forward lower lobe cargo compartment and supplies air to the conditioned air manifold. With off selected, the lower lobe cargo compartments are not air conditioned. All of Pack 2 and Pack 3 air is diverted to the conditioned air manifold, which air conditions the main deck and upper deck. With forward high selected, all of Pack 3 air conditions the forward lower lobe cargo compartment. With aft high selected, all of Pack 2 air conditions the aft lower lobe cargo compartment. This switch controls the equipment cooling system. The equipment cooling switch is usually left in normal. Select normal. In normal, a supply fan pulls air from the cabin into the system. A connection is provided for ground-conditioned air dedicated to equipment cooling when outside air temperatures are high. Air enters the ducts and passes by a smoke detector and low flow sensors. The smoke detector checks for the presence of smoke in the ducts. The low flow sensors detect fan failures by the lack of airflow. The inboard supply valve is normally open to allow air to flow in the ducts, but it closes for certain non-normal conditions, as you will see later in this lesson. Cooling air enters the flight deck panels, displays, and equipment racks from below and is drawn into the exhaust ducts by an exhaust fan. Air is then exhausted into the forward cargo compartment to heat the compartment. The equipment cooling system operates differently on the ground than in the air. On the ground, exhaust air can go into the forward cargo compartment or overboard, depending on the outside air temperature. On the ground, when one or more engines on each wing are operating, the system configures for flight by closing the ground exhaust valve to allow cabin pressurization. You can manually configure the airplane for flight by positioning the equipment cooling selector to standby. In the air, under normal conditions, the inboard exhaust valve is open and all exhaust air goes into the forward cargo compartment. With the equipment cooling selector in the normal or standby position, the system configures to the closed loop mode if a single system fan fails. In the closed loop mode, the inboard supply valve, the inboard exhaust valve, and the ground exhaust valves close. The bypass valve opens and the operating fan cools the equipment. The aft cargo heat switch enables the aft cargo heat system. This turns on heat to the aft and bulk cargo compartments. A single two-position temperature selector is used for both the aft and the bulk cargo compartments. It is located inside and just forward of the bulk cargo door. The temperature selected is based on the type of cargo being carried. The temperature in the aft and bulk cargo compartments show on the synoptic as a single averaged temperature. When the aft cargo heat switch is pushed on, the temperature control and overheat shutoff valves open. The thermostat output opens and closes the temperature control valve to maintain the selected temperature. The overheat shutoff valve prevents excessive temperatures in the compartments. The control valve is normally closed when the aft cargo compartment air conditioning system is on. But if the temperature under the floor decreases to 4 degrees Celsius, the control valve opens and gives heat to the compartment. Controls for the foot and shoulder heaters are located here on the sidewall panels. This switch operates the foot heater. The foot heater is an electrically heated plate mounted on the floor beneath the captain's and first officer's rudder pedals. The heater works in the air only. Select low with the foot heater switch and watch the result on the heated plate. With low selected, the temperature of the plate is automatically maintained. Now, increase the temperature on the foot heater by selecting high. As you can see, selecting high increases the temperature of the foot heater, and now the new temperature is automatically maintained. Next, let's discuss the shoulder heater. This switch operates the shoulder heater. The control operates an electric heater in the side window's air supply. The heater works in the air only. Switch to low to see how the system works. As the heating element heats up, it warms the air flowing to the side windows. Now increase the temperature to the shoulder heater. As you can see, the shoulder heater control is similar to the foot heater. The temperature regulation of both the foot and shoulder heater is automatic. There are non-normal ICAS messages associated with trim air, packs, equipment cooling, and cargo heat. We begin with the trim air non-normals. The ICAS advisory message, Trim Air Off, displays if the trim air switch is off or the trim air regulation and shutoff valve is failed closed. Delete the message from ICAS by activating the trim air system. Correct. The system fault light and the ICAS message temperature zone can display for several reasons. There is a zone duct overheat, the trim air regulation and shutoff valve is failed closed, or the zone temperature controller has failed. In this example, let's look at a zone duct overheat. Pushing the pack reset switch may restore normal operation. Push the pack reset switch. If the temperature zone message remains displayed or is displayed again within 5 minutes, turn the trim air switch off. If the zone temperature controller failed, all cabin zones are maintained at a moderate temperature. We'll look at pack non-normals next. These messages are associated with the air conditioning packs. The ICAS advisory message "Pack" may be displayed for several reasons. There could be a controller fault, a pack operation fault, the pack could have overheated, or Pack 2 shut down with either cabin pressure relief valve open. In all cases, the pack is automatically shut off. In this example, the system fault light and the ICAS message Pack 3 are displayed due to a pack overheat. The respective flow control and shutoff valve closed, shutting off bleed air to the pack. The system can be reset after time is allowed for pack cooling. Push the pack reset switch. Pushing the pack reset switch resets the system. If the message displays again, select Pack 3, Controller B. Push the pack reset switch to reset the system. If the message remains or comes up again, turn off the respective pack. Turn off Pack 3. The system fault light and the ICAS message Pack Control indicate that automatic control of the outlet temperature of all packs has failed. Pushing the pack reset switch may restore normal operation. If the message remains displayed or displays again, packs continue to operate, but air outlet temperature is not controlled. This message is associated with the equipment cooling system. The ICAS caution message, equipment cooling, can display on the ground or in flight. The message displays if any of these conditions occur. If the message occurs on the ground, it indicates the system has not reconfigured for flight after engine start. Turn the equipment cooling switch to standby. If the message occurs in flight, turn the equipment cooling switch to override. Air for the equipment cooling now reverse flows through the pilot's instrument panels and the equipment racks and out the smoke override valve. The amount of airflow through the equipment cooling system varies with differential pressure. This message is associated with the cargo heat system. The ICAS advisory message, temperature cargo heat, displays if an overheat occurs in the aft cargo compartments. It is accompanied by a temperature light in the aft cargo heat switch and closure of the overheat shutoff valve. If cargo heat is not required, pushing the switch to off removes power from the system. The temperature light and the ICAS message extinguish when the compartment temperature returns to the normal range.